You ever seen a machine that works even at -70 degrees? Consider a vehicle. People live, cook, and sleep in it. But outside, it is deserted and cold like space. In the 1950s, America tried to conquer this icy continent but failed. Then the Soviets stepped in. They built a giant machine converted from a tank in 3 months. But the real question is this: could this vehicle really go all the way to the middle of Antarctica? Or would it too remain just a dream lost beneath the ice? After World War I, the struggle between America and the Soviet Union did not end. During the Cold War, which lasted approximately 45 years, the two countries competed in many areas, from armaments to intelligence, from economics to science and the space race. One of these races was to cross Antarctica by road, traveling thousands of kilometers in -70 degrees. The United States quickly began work in 1939 and soon set out to explore the continent with a giant exploration vehicle called the Snow Cruiser. However, when the vehicle reached Antarctica, it was unable to move in the thick snow. His wheels got stuck in the snow. The team realized they could navigate better in reverse, but they knew this wasn't a long-term solution, and the mission failed. The vehicle, worth approximately $3.5 million in today's money, had to be abandoned among the glaciers. 7 years later, the Americans reached the center of Antarctica, this time by plane, and established the Amundsen-Scott base. However, there was still no country that crossed the continent by land. The Soviet Union, watching America's failed attempt closely, took action towards the same goal in 1956. The aim was to cross Antarctica, which was a 2-meter thick ice formation that America could not cross by land, and to gain scientific and political superiority. It had already managed to establish air bases in 2 countries, but land transportation still seemed impossible. So the Soviets commissioned a large team of engineers to design a new vehicle capable of reaching the interior of Antarctica. The military trucks and tractors used in the first trials could not withstand Antarctic conditions. It was almost impossible to keep the vehicles running in temperatures as cold as -70 degrees. The vehicle's gasoline was reaching freezing point, and even solidifying enough to be cut with a saw. In addition, lack of oxygen reduced the engine's performance. Under these conditions, crews were forced to light fires underneath the vehicles to keep them running. Realizing that progress was impossible under these conditions, Soviet engineers decided to design a new vehicle. The new version of the vehicle should be able to protect the fuel, crew, and engine from cold temperatures reaching -70 degrees. It also had to function as a living space during the 3-month journey. After the previous failure, the Soviet leadership ordered the development of a new reconnaissance vehicle. This task was given to the Kharkov Vehicle Engineering Plant in Ukraine. The engineers were given only 3 months. During this time, the design, production, and testing of the vehicle had to be completed. If they failed, the Soviets would suffer a great loss of prestige vis-a-vis the United States. Under this pressure, the engineers at the Kharkov tank factory had to work day and night and complete the vehicle within 3 months. To gain speed, they based an existing platform, the heavy artillery tractor. This tractor was based on the T-54 tank chassis and could move safely over difficult terrain. The new vehicle was built on this chassis. The body is extended. The pallet system was expanded and a completely enclosed structure was created. The decision led to the birth of a machine that would soon go down in history. Kharkovchanka. This vehicle, called the Kharkovchanka, was a giant monster weighing approximately 35 tons. It had a diesel engine with power close to an aircraft engine and could pull very heavy loads. The fuel tank was quite large. It would be able to travel approximately 1,500 kilometers without stopping. It could attach and pull a 60-ton load and carried a crane capable of lifting 20 tons. The cabin was lined with thick insulation. Even if it was -70 degrees outside, the temperature inside would drop by at most 12 degrees in a day. This is not just a tool. It would also be a living space during the 3-month journey. The Kharkovchanka was designed so that the crew could survive for days without leaving the ship. It contained a small kitchen, dining area, toilet, radio room, clothes drying area, beds, and a sky observation dome. Engine faults can be repaired from the inside. The windows could melt the ice with the heating system. All these features made the Kharkovchanka the most advanced polar vehicle of its time. These new generation snow giants became the symbol of Soviet power in the poles. And 3 months later, in 1959, 3 Kharkovchankas set off for Antarctica. The Soviet team set out from Mirny Base towards the interior of Antarctica. The aim was to reach the U.S. Amundsen Scott Base by road. This would be the longest and most difficult overland expedition in Antarctic history. The vehicles began to move towards the center of the continent, pulling heavy sleds loaded with fuel and supplies. The temperature along the way ranged from -50 to -70 degrees. At high altitudes, lack of oxygen put a strain on the engines, and oil temperatures rose to 100 degrees. In previous vehicles, the engines were freezing because they were outside. This time, the engine was housed in an insulated interior cabin. The crew could inspect and maintain the engine without leaving the vehicle. An additional heating system and exhaust heat recovery system were added next to the engine. Thus, this system kept the engine warm and heated the cabin. Still, the noise and exhaust smell were sometimes unbearable. The problem of the engine being choked by lack of oxygen was solved with a turbocharging system. This system could compress the air and provide more oxygen to the engine. They solved the problem of gasoline freezing in the previous version by integrating the fuel tanks into the warm interior area of the vehicle. However, fuel consumption was higher than expected. Approximately 10 liters of diesel were consumed for 1 kilometer. Also, the track pins broke frequently, and each time, they quickly repaired them and continued where they left off. Despite all these difficulties, they continued to move forward. They completed the 2,700 km adventure at a speed of only 10 kilometers per hour. Along the way, they not only advanced, but also collected seismic measurements and geographic data. They continued on their way, leaving behind 2 deep parasites amidst snowstorms and giant ice caps. After a journey that lasted months and was plagued by constant problems, the Soviet team finally managed to reach the South Pole. When the Kharkovchanka vehicles entered the Amundsen Scott Base, the Americans gave them a warm welcome. This event went down in history as a rare moment of scientific friendship during the Cold War. Despite the harsh and cold atmosphere of political tension, American and Soviet scientists worked together for 3 days. The flags of the 2 countries flew side by side. After a short rest, the Soviet team set off on their return journey. The total journey, including the outbound and return trip, took 89 days, and the 3 Kharkovchanka vehicles successfully returned to the Mirny base. This expedition went down in history as the longest and most challenging overland exploration mission ever completed in Antarctica. Between 1974 and 1975, Soviet engineers designed the second-generation Kharkovchanka to address the problems in the first model. In the new model, the engine and driver's cabin were moved to the front of the vehicle. Thus, noise, exhaust gas, and heat problems were reduced. 3 more second-generation Kharkovets were produced and sent to Antarctica. In the 1980s, a more powerful and less fuel-consuming third-generation model was designed. However, the project remained unfinished due to the collapse of the Soviet Union. America had failed, but the Soviets did not give up. In total, within 6 months, they produced the Kharkovchanka and managed to travel approximately 2,700 kilometers at a speed of 10 kilometers per hour at -70 degrees and reached the works of Antarctica. The Soviets were the first country to conquer glaciers by land. The Kharkovchanka remained in service for many years. It continued to carry fuel and equipment to the bases repeatedly. It was last used in 2010. Today, one of those vehicles still stands as an exhibit in Antarctica. If you like stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you like the video and write a comment, you will give me great support. I am Owl of Ages. See you in the next episode.